I'm Jeff Allen Wolf. This is A World Gone Mad. I'm going to give everyone a reprieve tonight so some of you can catch up on the podcast episodes. This episode's going to be a shorter one. Here we go. I'm pissed. What Donald Trump did today is so egregious that everyone is reacting to it. So let's stop dancing around this. What Donald Trump just amplified is racist, dangerous, and completely unfit for the presidency. Donald Trump shared a video on Truth Social that depicted Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as apes. Apes. One of the oldest and most vile racist tropes in modern history. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't satire. It was the kind of imagery that's been used for generations to degrade black Americans and strip them of their humanity. The video was eventually taken down after backlash from both parties. But that's not the point. The point is that the current president of the United States saw that video, chose to elevate that video, and in doing so showed the country exactly where his judgment now stands. Now, I need to speak plainly, because the country has spent far too many years tiptoeing around behavior that would have disqualified any other president overnight. This isn't a political strategy. It isn't messaging. It isn't some clever attempt to provoke outrage. It's the conduct of a man who either can't control his impulses or no longer understands the gravity of his actions. Neither possibility is remotely acceptable in someone entrusted with the power of the presidency. At nearly 80 years old, Donald Trump isn't some reckless newcomer who doesn't understand the weight of the presidency. He knows exactly what these images mean. He knows the history behind them. He knows the pain they carry. And Trump pushed it out into the world anyway. That isn't a lapse of judgment. That's a collapse of judgment. We need to stop normalizing the cycle where something outrageous happens, people gasp for a day, and then the country moves on, and this is just the cost of modern politics. It isn't normal for a president to amplify racism. It isn't normal for someone occupying the Oval Office to behave like an internet troll with nuclear codes. Leadership requires discipline. Leadership requires emotional control. Leadership requires a baseline respect for the humanity of others. What we're witnessing isn't a slow erosion of presidential standards. Donald Trump obliterated those standards during his first presidency, is now grinding what remains into the dirt in his second. Let me be very clear about something. This isn't about partisan warfare. When even members of his own party express outrage, that should tell you the line that was crossed here isn't ideological. It's moral. There was a time in this country when behavior like this would have ended a political career instantly. Not wounded it, ended it. The presidency was understood to demand a level of character that placed certain conduct permanently out of bounds. Today, we keep lowering that bar, and every time we do, the office itself becomes smaller. So we have to confront this question head on. How many more warnings do we need before we accept what's right in front of us? Donald Trump is demonstrating again and again that he's unfit to lead a diverse, pluralistic democracy. A person who repeatedly traffics in division, resentment, and racial provocation isn't showing strength. He's showing instability. Because let's call this what it is. When someone with that kind of influence amplifies imagery rooted in hatred, it doesn't stay contained to a social media post. It signals permission. Permission for ugliness to surface. Permission for the worst instincts in our politics to grow louder. That's how a country coarsens. Not overnight, but drip by drip, until people forget what dignity and leadership even looks like. We can't afford that kind of amnesia. And at some point, this stops being about whether you support his policies or like his style. This becomes a fundamental question of national safety and institutional integrity. The presidency isn't entertainment. It isn't a stage for grievance. It's a role that carries enormous consequence for millions of lives. When someone shows you repeatedly that they're willing to inflame, degrade, and divide, you should believe them. So yes, I'm going to say what far too many people still hesitate to say out loud. Donald Trump must be removed from the control of power in this country. Whether it happens at the ballot box or through the guardrails of our democratic system doing exactly what they were designed to do, it can't be optional anymore. A healthy democracy doesn't knowingly hand authority to someone who keeps demonstrating contempt for its foundational values. America is supposed to be bigger than this, stronger than this, more mature than this. Think about the message this sends to younger generations watching all of it unfold. We tell our children that character matters, that cruelty is unacceptable, that racism is a stain on the nation's history we must never, never repeat. And yet, they see a president engage in the very behavior we warn them against. What lesson are we teaching if we shrug our shoulders now? This isn't about outrage for outrage's sake. It's about drawing a line that says the presidency still means something, that there are standards that can't be negotiated away simply because someone is politically powerful. Because once a nation stops expecting moral seriousness from its leaders, it begins to drift, institutions weaken, trust erodes, allies question us, adversaries study the chaos. History doesn't look kindly on countries that ignore warning signs and real time. Make no mistake, this is a warning sign. You're looking at a man, Trump, who continues to escalate his rhetoric, escalate his behavior, and test just how far the boundaries can be pushed. That isn't strength. That's recklessness. The American presidency demands steadiness. It demands judgment. It demands a temperament capable of carrying enormous responsibility without resorting to cruelty or spectacle. What we're seeing instead is a pattern that should alarm anyone who cares about the long-term health of this republic. Enough with the excuses. Enough with pretending each incident from Trump exists in isolation. Enough with the national fatigue that tricks us into accepting what should never be acceptable. We aren't powerless here. Voters aren't powerless. Institutions aren't powerless. The country isn't powerless. But recognizing that power begins with clarity. And clarity requires us to stop minimizing moments like this from Donald Trump. Donald Trump is telling the nation who he is. The only real question left is whether we're prepared to listen. Because the presidency isn't a prize to be handed to the loudest voice. It's a trust. And trust, once broken this many times, isn't something a serious nation restores lightly. The United States can't afford leadership that drags it backward into the language and imagery of its darkest chapters. We've seen and heard enough. And I'm going to say something to you, the listener, that many people will criticize, many will argue with, and some will flat out refuse to accept. But it needs to be said anyway. I'm embarrassed for this country because of Donald Trump. Yes, embarrassed. Because the presidency is supposed to represent the very best of America, not the most reckless, not the most divisive, and certainly not the most openly degrading behavior we're capable of producing on the world stage. Some people will take me to task for saying that. So be it. Truth isn't measured by how comfortable it makes us. And if you're intellectually honest, if you're paying attention, if you still believe leadership should carry dignity, then on some level you know exactly what I'm talking about. Donald Trump is a disgrace to the United States. He's the poorest example of what this nation should stand for. A country built on ideals, on progress, on the constant pursuit of becoming better than we were yesterday, doesn't find its reflection in cruelty, chaos, and moral carelessness. What makes this even more alarming is that we're no longer talking about occasional misconduct from Trump. We're looking at a pattern that raises serious questions about judgment, stability, fitness to lead, and yes, sanity. Donald Trump is a lost soul in a fog of deterioration and showing fewer signs that he understands the gravity of the office he holds or the consequences of the words and images he elevates. And that should frighten every American, regardless of party. Because the person sitting behind the resolute desk isn't supposed to inflame the nation. He's supposed to steady it. He isn't supposed to degrade the office. He's supposed to honor it. This country deserves leadership, grounded in maturity, discipline, and respect for the enormous responsibility that comes with presidential power. Donald Trump is the ultimate disgrace to the office of the presidency. And when his grip on power finally ends, I won't pretend neutrality. I'll celebrate loudly because it will mean this country has a chance to reclaim the standards that once made that office worthy of respect. America is better than what we're being asked to tolerate. And the sooner we remember that, the stronger this nation will be. And to the supporters of Donald, and I doubt any of you are listening to my podcast, you should be ashamed of yourself. Where's your integrity? Where's your soul? Where's your respect for others? Stop supporting someone who is this poisonous, not only to America, but to the whole world. It's time to recapture the greatness of what America should be. I'm Jeff Allen Wolf. This is A World Gone Mad. Wolfpack listeners, at a time when truth is getting buried under lies, and too many of the wrong voices are telling you what to think, be skeptical, question everything. Don't lose hope. But most of all, stay alert.
There is chaos in the world, can't you see?